Funcionando? Esse, tá. Ok. Boa tarde. Vamos dar continuidade, então, agora com a apresentação do professor Bruce Duncan, vai falar com a gente sobre carga global de doenças. O professor Bruce possui graduação em medicina pela Johns Hopkins Universidade, graduação em economia pelo William College, mestrado em saúde pública pela Johns Hopkins, doutorado em medicina, ciências médicas pela Universidade Federal do Rio Grande do Sul, pós-doutorado em epidemiologia pela Universidade do Norte da Carolina. É professor titular da Universidade Federal do Rio Grande do Sul, área de atuação em saúde coletivas e com ênfase em epidemiologia, foco em diabetes, obesidade, fatores de risco para doenças cardiovasculares. Também em medicina baseada em evidência, atenção primária à saúde e carga de doenças. O professor Duncan tem muitos artigos científicos publicados em bases de dados importantes, muitas bases de dados importantes. O professor é um dos fundadores do programa de epidemiologia da Universidade Federal do Rio Grande do Sul. Professor Duncan, por favor.
Bom dia. Está me ouvindo adequadamente?
Sim.
Bom, então, as I said, I'm going to present data on the global burden of disease study, what it is, what it shows, and how one can use it. So what is the global burden of disease study? It's a systematic scientific effort to quantify the comparative magnitude of health loss due to diseases, injuries, and risk factors by age, sex, and geographies for specific points in time. In terms of where it came from, it was originally sponsored by the World Bank and the World Health Organization in 1990. After several years of work, preliminary results were published, and then in 1997, more finalized results, the first version was published in The Lancet, covering 8 regions, 107 diseases, and 10 risk factors. And then the next big jump was in 2007 with the creation of the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation, which is funded very generously, as in hundreds of millions of dollars, by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So things have changed from then to now. The current version of the Global Burden of Disease, 2019, investigates 369 diseases and injuries, 87 risk factors, covers a period from 1990 to 2019, is divided into 23 age strata, covers 204 countries and territories, both separately for men and women. It's come a long way. How does the GBD perform its analyses? Bottom line is it's very complicated. I've been working with the GBD for about 10 years now, and there's plenty of things that I still don't completely understand and will never understand. When those calculus symbols show up in the explanation, it's too far for me. But basically, the GBD assembles epidemiologic descriptive data about diseases and risk factors from around the world. It does systematic reviews going for prevalence, incidence, mortality, excess risk or relative risk of given diseases and risk factors for outcomes, and then puts all this into their computers and applies very sophisticated modeling processes and techniques with the objective of estimating basic disease metrics or indicators, and to fill in the blanks. What are the blanks? Well, the blanks are more than what's there, because they're estimating things for these indicators, these metrics for every year, for every locale. And for example, diabetes, a prevalence study. Brazil has a nice prevalence study of Brazil in 2013, and the Pesquisa Nacional de Saúde, another in 2019. But between then are blanks that need to be filled in. Brazil has very good data. Paraguay, not so good. So Paraguay borrows data from Brazil and the other countries around it to make its estimates of disease metrics. So that's to say the GBD borrows data from the countries around it to provide data for Paraguay. So that's at a very high level how it works. The main goal of the GBD is to estimate burden, and the main metric for burden is DALYs. The DALYs are disability-adjusted life years. That's to say disability-adjusted life years lost to disease. That's the number of years of healthy life, completely healthy life, lost. DALYs are made up of morbidity and mortality. On the left, you have YLDs, or years lived with disability, which cover the morbidity part. To the right, you have YLLs, or years of life lost, which cover the mortality part. If you look at the graph below, we have a life course of a person who began healthy, had a bout of a broken arm, and then had a bout of something more important, maybe a cancer that he was cured of, and then toward the end of his life had some incapacitation, which left him bed rest. The GBD sums these events to create YLDs, the number of years he lived with disability, or more specifically, the full number of years equivalent lost of life due to the fact that he was living with disability. And then to the right, he died an early death. He died with some life expectancy still present. And this difference between when he died and his expected life expectancy is calculated as years of life lost, which is the mortality part. Going into a little more detail, GBD with respect to the mortality part and the YLLs, created a standard life expectancy table, which is shown on the right of the slide. This table shows for each age, or for each age strata, the expected number of years forward before death. It's the same for both sexes, all nations, and regardless of socioeconomic situation. It's estimated as the life expectancy of the country around the world with the longest life expectancy for each of these strata. And then to calculate YLLs, we have deaths in a given population, for example, taken from the Brazilian, if it's Brazil, taken from the Brazilian Mortality Information System. If someone dies at 5, as you can see from the table, his life expectancy was 81.8 years when he died. So his death contributes 81.8 YLLs, years of life lost. If someone died at 50, it produces only 37.6 YLLs. Thus, more weight is given to deaths that occur among young people. And YLLs for a population are the sum of all their deaths times the number of years premature to the standard life expectancy that these deaths occurred. And YLLs can be calculated for a given disease, say diabetes, a given risk factor like high body mass index, or overall for a country like for Brazil. The rules for calculating YLDs and morbidity, or disability as it's called in the GBD, are the following. They're a bit more complicated. Each person, as shown in the diagram before, can be sick many times in his life, and it can be due to multiple diseases. Each of these diseases can have multiple sequelae, direct complications of the disease. For example, someone with diabetes could have diabetic retinopathy. Each sequelae can be a combination of one or more health states. For example, the diabetic retinopathy, the person has low vision. But the examples here could be someone with type 2 diabetes, undergoing dialysis, with moderate anemia, and the other effects of living with renal failure. Someone with diabetes could be amputated. Someone, it's not just diabetes, obviously, in the GBD. Someone could suffer the disfigurement due to leprosy, or the problems living with the metastatic phase of stomach cancer. The sequela list is mutually exclusive, and any short or long-term health loss produces disability. Health states are any unique type of disability. They reflect key differences in symptoms, functionings, or health loss. An example of the health state would be undergoing dialysis due to type 2 diabetes with moderate anemia and the effects of renal failure. The GBD has developed 440 unique health states, and to each of them is applied a disability weight. A disability weight is a number on a scale from 0 to 1, reflecting the severity of the health loss associated with a health state resulting from the sequela. Here's an example of a scale of disabilities. On the left is perfect health, which has no disability weight, 0. On the right is death with the disability weight of 1. If someone has mild distance vision impairment, that's not such a big deal. So the disability weight of mild distance vision impairment is very close to 0. On the other hand, if someone suffered a spinal cord lesion at the neck, which is not treated, it's getting pretty close to death in terms of the quality of his life. So there's a high disability weight. And all the health states receive a disability weight. So to calculate the YLDs, or the burden due to disability or morbidity, for a given disease, and can be done separately for a given risk factor, within each of the age, sex strata, because everything is done in GBD on stratas of age and sex of a given country's location X here. First, you start with the prevalence of the disease or the risk factor. For example, diabetes. Say the prevalence of diabetes in the age strata of men from 60 to 64 years of age is 20%. And then one of the complications of diabetes is diabetic retinopathy with vision loss. So we need to estimate for diabetes what's the prevalence of vision loss, sequelae, in this population. Let's say 10%. So the YLDs are then calculated, multiplying the sequela prevalence, diabetes in this age strata, times the disability weight associated with it, multiplying the sequela, which is diabetic retinopathy with moderate vision loss, times the disability weight associated with moderate vision loss due to diabetic retinopathy. Then the disabilities are summed. So if we're talking about vision loss here, the vision loss due to diabetic retinopathy is summed across all of the age sex strata to get the sum of this sequela in terms of YLDs for the population. And then diabetes has more than diabetic retinopathy as a sequela. We need to sum all of the sequela of diabetes, amputation, neuropathy, vision loss due to diabetic retinopathy, and so on. We need to sum the YLDs for all of them to get the YLDs for diabetes. And then if you wanted to know the YLDs for a given population, then you have to sum the YLDs across all the diseases, or if you're using risk factors, against all of the risk factors, to get the YLDs, or the sum of disability, the estimate of disability in population X. And then to get DALYs, now it's simple. You just sum the YLLs and the YLDs, and you have an estimate in years of life lost due to disease for a given disease, for a given population, for a given risk factor. There are other details in the methodology. One of the details is the GBD has divided the world into 7 super regions, which are shown a key below, for example, East Asia Pacific or Latin America Caribbean. These super regions are divided into regions. The Latin American Caribbean region has a Caribbean, Central Latin America, and the colors on the map here, tropical Latin America, and Latin America Andean. There's also a high-income region, which is not geographically specific. It takes a high income from the Southern Cone, from North America, from Australia and New Zealand, from Asia, and puts them all together into one region. So there are 7 super regions, 21 regions, 204 countries and territories, and then 519 geographical locations, because some of the countries are broken down. For example, for Brazil, we have more than Brazil. We have each state has these estimates. These regions, locations are shown on the map. And GBD also created something called a socio-demographic index, which is a measure of development. You could think of it as equivalent of a measure of poverty, say, but it's development. They created a number for each locality, going from 0 to 1, 1 being most developed, 0 being least developed, and then stratified them into 5 SDI strata, going from low through low middle, middle, high middle, to high. And this is a map slightly old of these regions. You can see that the North America is all high. Africa is mostly low, with some low middle and a little bit of middle and high middle. Brazil, for example, is almost uniformly middle, although some of the Northeast states are low middle. At least they were when this was published, which I believe is 2016. Okay, let's move on to products. What has GBD produced? Well, GBD's produced a tremendous amount of stuff. 28,000 publications and counting. Free country visualizations, which I'm going to talk about a bit more, and also profiles, which you can find on the internet for your country if you're interested. The main publications are called capstones. They come out around every 2 years, although the pandemic has thrown things a bit off. And they are put together, they're published in the Lancet, they're put together into a single issue, and they emphasize the main findings of GBD on that round, because it's important to realize it's an iterative process. All is recalculated every 2 years now. So currently, if you went on the internet, you would find GBD 2019. Hopefully in 2 months, if you went there, you'd find GBD 2021, which is the upcoming version, which is basically ready and will be published shortly when the capstones all have come out. And when this renovation, this iteration happens, then all the data are new, all the data are re-estimated. Aside from the capstones, there are international publications dealing with specific subjects like pollution, alcohol, diabetes, chronic renal kidney disease, sort of virtually anything. And then there are a series of country-based publications, which I'll talk about a little bit further on. It's interesting to note that GBD has adopted the attitude of being very open and soliciting participation of collaborators. And around the world now, more than 10,000 people have said, yes, I want to be a collaborator. Being a collaborator permits access to co-authorship on certain publications and possibilities to contribute in any means of ways to making the GBD better. What it doesn't do is pay. So you can see countries like Brazil and Colombia and Mexico in Latin America have a large number of collaborators, upwards to 200. And then some countries have a tremendous number of collaborators. I think Ethiopia apparently has more than 1,000 collaborators. So let me talk now a little bit about an organization of this collaboration in Brazil. Brazil has a large number of collaborators, has for several years now, and in 2014 created a local network, Rede GBD Brazil, or Brazil GBD Network. You can see here it's composed of currently 150 researchers from 27 institutions around Brazil, from 10 of Brazil's states, and also with the support of the Ministry of Health. What does the GBD Brazil Network do? Well, it does, to a certain extent, everything that GBD does. It does, it's translated the GBD basic course, which is produced in Seattle, into Portuguese, and apparently coming up into Spanish for use, for better use by Spanish and Portuguese-speaking populations. Its main activity has been to produce publications, mostly dealing with GBD data in Brazil. There have been 3 supplementary issues of journals. The first, the Revista Brasileira de Epidemiologia, about 4 years ago, and then Population Health Metrics about 2 or 3 years ago, and then most recently in the Revista Sociedade Brasileira de Medicina Tropical, all of them with approximately 20 articles. It has stimulated production of several other articles, some of which are the topics of which are mentioned here, for example, analyses in countries of Mercosur. And so publication is probably the main activity of the network. But the network does a lot of things above and beyond that. It's involved in advising the Institute of Health Metrics, the home of the GBD, of data that exists and is not currently incorporated, in validating the metrics that are produced of publications, not just within the network, but that stimulates Brazilians to participate in the international publications also. The last supplement had contributions of 89 authors and 22 who came from 22 Brazilian and international institutions. So you can see it's a very collaborative activity. Speaking of permitting collaboration in international articles, so this is an article that we published. Everton Cousin, who currently works in Seattle with the GBD, was the lead author. This is a doctoral work of his. We published on diabetes in the Americas, for example, showing that there are hotspots for diabetes. There are hotspot regions. Central America and the Caribbean have much more diabetes, much more DALYs due to diabetes, much more burden than, say, the Southern Cone or North America. And surprisingly, this is the previous slide, the color coding here, with red being a larger percentage change in DALYs due to diabetes, type 2 diabetes from 1990, is occurring basically in countries which did not have the highest burden originally in 1990, or I'll ask currently. So what that means is that the burden is large because we also demonstrated that this burden is in the region is 20% greater than the world's burden. It's growing, as you can see here. The vast majority of countries, only the purple and blue didn't have an increase in burden. All the rest did. And it's expanding in the sense that it's affecting more countries which were less affected in the past. So if you who are listening are interested in using GB data and don't have much experience yet, let me talk a little bit in the close here of how you can use the GBD data. First of all, you can use it to get a better understanding of descriptive epidemiology of different diseases and risk factors, their incidence prevalence, complications, risk factors, and burden. If you're involved in health systems, you can use GBD data for plan and also for evaluation of how things are going. If you're a doctoral student, say, or any person who publishes for that matter, and you want to establish context for your publications in the background of your paper, you can go into the GBD and talk about and get the severity of the condition that you're dealing with to place as a citation in the introduction. And you can participate in publications. Publications come in two flavors, those within the collaboration and those outside of the collaboration. Although the data is freely available and people around the world are publishing outside of the collaboration, those within the collaboration suggest that it's best to publish within the collaboration. And if you're interested in becoming a collaborator, you can put GBD collaborators into Google, and you'll come up with this link here, which will tell you how to become a collaborator. In terms of tools that if you want to use the data, you need to get access to it. So what are the means of access? First is the Global Health Data Exchange, which is a repository of, well, in 2016, there were 55,000 data sources. So in 2023, there are probably certainly more than 100,000 data sources, which the GBD has assembled. Publications, microdata from surveys, mortality data from the mortality data systems around the world, etc., which is the basis of their estimates. And then their visualization tools, the most important of which is GBD Compare, which I'm going to show some screen slides from now. If you're interested in knowing about the disease metrics of a given country or the world, where you need to go is GBD Compare. GBD Compare has presentations that deal with causes, so that's diseases or injuries, and also with risk factors. There are various measures that can be expressed: deaths, YLDs, YLLs, DALYs, incidence, prevalence, estimates of the prevalence of risk factors. You can do it for overall, for regions, for countries, for states in the countries that have broken down into states. You can do it for a given year. You can do it for an age strata, for men, women, or both. And using these different presentations laterally here, you can get dozens, if not hundreds, of different presentations. This one here, the heat map presentation, shows the relative prevalence of disease. The main causes of here, we're looking at DALYs, I believe. The main causes of DALY globally, for both sexes, all ages, that's to say not age standardized. And you can see that the main causes are ischemic heart disease, stroke, neonatal conditions, lower respiratory infections, and so on. The view here is a ranking. So here I have Peru. We're looking at DALYs. We're looking at all the age strata from both sexes. And you can see that in 2019, the main causes of DALYs or in Peru were malnutrition. These are risk factors, not diseases. These are risk factors: malnutrition, and then 3 metabolic risk factors associated predominantly with chronic diseases: high body mass index, high fasting plasma glucose, and high blood pressure, then air pollution, and then so on. And you can see the changes in these risk factors. You can see that, for example, the metabolic risk factors have uniformly increased as chronic disease has become more important over these 3 decades, and several of the risk factors that lead to problems with infections or maternal child health have decreased. If you want to compare countries, you can use this parameter pyramid here. Males on one side, females on the other. I've pulled up the Latin America and the Caribbean. We're looking at, let's see, YLLs, years of life lost, for all causes. And you can see that Peru, particularly Peruvian men, have the least number of YLLs. Haiti, and for men, interestingly, the U.S. Virgin Islands have the highest YLLs. So you can, the GBD is particularly good for making comparisons between countries. And you can see trends. Here we're down at this here. We're looking at changes over years, going from 1990 to 2019. This is not for Brazil. This is for Rio Grande do Sul, my state. You can see that over time, the deaths have decreased. Types of deaths are shown here. Each of these colors represents a group of deaths. For example, cardiovascular disease, this has gone down considerably. Cancer, not so much. And the group of maternal and child health, infectious diseases, nutritional deficiencies has also gone down considerably over this period. So accessing GBD Compare is very good for doing this. You can download the data. You can download the graphs. You can download the data. It's a little bit more complicated. You need to go to another tool and download it, but it's available to do. So that's basically how you get onto the GBD. And I stimulate all of you to get on and who haven't done it before, to get on and try. It's a very valuable resource. And that's it. Thank you very much.